Welcome, Bruchim Abbaim. I'm Rabbi Paul, your virtual rabbi, and you have found Beit Virtuali. Now, these are usually long videos, so instead of waiting till the end, which I don't know how many people actually get there, love to hear in the comments below if you are a faithful get to the very end listener. But if you want to know how to help this channel and make sure we are able to continue delivering this content, please click the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. It really does make a difference. If you want to see whenever something pops up, click the bell, turn on notifications. All right, enough of that. Let's get right into it. My question of the day is, have you ever stepped into a room where you have no idea what anyone is saying or what anyone is doing? I think the first time I experienced that was my first philosophy class at the University of Montana. But this is the experience that many people have when they step into a synagogue, whether for the first time or a synagogue that's not their home synagogue, or they've grown up Reform and they've gone to a conservative synagogue, or they've grown up Orthodox and have gone to a Reform synagogue. Either way, it can feel like you've stepped onto another planet, but from more of a Reform standpoint, if you step into a conservative or Orthodox synagogue where the services are more likely than not, especially in the United States, going to be much more Hebrew than you're used to, it can be incredibly off-putting. And I know in my career as a congregational rabbi, I've been accused of being a crypto-Orthodox rabbi, which is hilarious considering my academic understanding of the Torah and how I teach Judaism. But I believe very strongly in the use of a lot of Hebrew, and I'll do another video coming up on why that's the case. But I do understand how off-putting that can be. And it's off-putting because, especially as adults, especially as sometimes very accomplished adults, stepping into a situation where all of a sudden you feel less accomplished, where you are encountering something that you don't understand, it can not only be unpleasant, it can be slightly, well, I was going to say humiliating. I think humbling is maybe the better thing, but humbling is perhaps a good thing at times, and humiliating is incredibly unpleasant. And in Judaism, we are not to shame anyone in public. And so as part of what we do on Beit Virtuali, I actually want to start adding a few videos on ways that we can understand the things that are incomprehensible, the things that maybe we don't have a relationship with by we left Judaism after our bar mitzvah, or we never had teachers that really helped us engage in this way, or maybe we're stuck thinking that Judaism is all about getting down on our face in front of a bearded dude in the sky, in which case you really need to listen to a lot more of these videos and really need to understand that that probably hasn't been Judaism for a very, very long time. But I want to help us become more conscious in what we do within our Judaism. And part of the way that I look at this is we should be able to step into any synagogue of any stream of Judaism, of Sephardic or Ashkenaz in any country, and know where we are in the prayer book, how to find our way in the prayer book, and then how to make meaning out of what's going on, even if we're lost in the overall type of ritual or some of the aesthetic aspects of what's going on, or even if our Hebrew isn't up to it. And before I jump into the meat of this, there are two sides to this. There's the individual responsibility side, the responsibility we need to take upon ourselves to educate ourselves, but there's also the responsibility as leaders in Judaism, as also the Jew in the pew. And do you want to know what a welcoming synagogue feels like? I'll give an example. Back when I was really just learning how to daven, I was actually just learning how to lay tefillin, the synagogue on the way from where I was living in South Seattle to where I was working in downtown Seattle was a Sephardic Orthodox synagogue called Ezebazerath. It's a Rhodesian tradition synagogue, one of the oldest Jewish communities in Seattle, and really an amazing, beautiful, beautiful place. Now, if you've ever been to a Sephardic synagogue, you'll know that every single word in the prayer book is spoken or sung. And if it's every single word, you have to do it fast, otherwise you're going to be there forever, which means they pray fast. And that was incredibly, well, difficult to get used to, but it was exciting because as you're engaging in it, you do feel your Hebrew getting better. But also, you know, it took me forever to lay tefillin. At the time, it took me 20 minutes to get them on, and I had a guy. I don't know his name. It saddens me. I need to go back there just to talk to this guy and say thank you, because for 6 months, he sat down next to me as soon as he realized that I was struggling with some of the things that were a little bit foreign to me. And he did two things. One, he just gave me tricks and tips on how to put on tefillin. It was Sephardic style, which hurts my fingers, so I do it Hasidic style now. But, you know, he helped me along that path. He even would give me a few ideas on what that meant, or a way to think, a kavanah. maybe not something we always associate with what's happening in a Sephardic synagogue, but oh boy, did this person help me out. And then finally he sat there next to me every time I showed up. He would even move across the room, and he would always hold his siddur, his prayer book, in such a way that I could see what page we were on. Didn't shame me in public, didn't treat me like an idiot, just made sure that I could see where we were. And if you want to know how to make someone feel welcome, if you see someone who doesn't look like they know what they're doing, don't shame them. Don't ask them if they know what they're doing. I mean, greet them and ask them if they need anything. But sit next to them and just show them what page you're on without shaming them. Do you know how welcome that person will feel? All right, that's not the underlying idea of this video, but there's a lot that we can do to help when someone else is on their own personal journey of making their Judaism a more conscious, more knowledgeable aspect of their life. So where I want to go today is a very simple, basic pattern that we can look at, especially for morning prayer. This is really for shacharit, for morning blessings, and it works for morning prayer. It doesn't matter if it's weekday or Shabbat or during a festival, but I'm going to focus on weekday prayers right now, just for the sake of this video. And if we're lost, if we don't know what we're doing, if we're not fluent in mumbling through Hebrew or speaking clearly through Hebrew, how can we still get meaning out of it? Is there an underlying structure? And I admit I'm a formalist. I come at this as a musician, as a trained musician. And the analogy that I always use when it comes to Jewish prayer is it has a structure. And the structure has evolved over literally thousands of years. And any structure, any form that's evolved that long has meaning, even if we don't understand what that meaning is. See previous podcast on Chesterfield's fence. And so unfortunately, and I know it's slightly polemic, I've been to a lot of synagogues where the siddur, the liturgy, is seen very much as a cafeteria. Take what you want and pay for it later. So one of the analogies that I like to use is a Mozart symphony. So let's go to a concert and see a Mozart symphony. And we get there, and they start off by playing the third movement of the 38th Symphony, followed by the first movement of the 40th Symphony, followed by the second movement. I think you see where I'm going. It would still, if it's played well, it's still going to sound good. The order of the movements are going to be off from the form that was developed. The keys aren't going to match in the way that Mozart intended. It's still going to be interesting and sound good, but it's going to lose a lot. It's going to lose a lot of the meta structure. And it's certainly going to lose a lot of the underlying meaning. Oftentimes, even if we don't know what that meaning is, we have an innate sense. That's how forms grow over time. And the Jewish liturgy is filled with just level upon level upon level of meaning. And if we say, well, it's too hard to learn the whole thing, or it's too long to sit through, we're throwing away things without necessarily knowing what they are. So when I was at a congregation in the Seattle area, one of the things that I worked on to teach the kids, because we really took how we did prayer very, very seriously. Not that others didn't. It's just that we took it very seriously. We oftentimes had more kids for a Sunday school service, a shacharit lechol, a weekly service on Sunday morning than there was for Shabbat. And we had times in a very small community between the kids and the parents, and these were kids from 5 to 14. Parents show up, 70, 80 people would be there. And these kids knew what they were doing. They knew where they were because of this image. And over time, I've realized that I think we all need this. So this is what I call the parable of the three rooms. And just to talk about it from a really large structural standpoint, here's how I want you to look at it. And then we're going to delve into each room a little bit. And the first room, and again, this is specifically focusing on morning prayers. We wake up, right? We wake up and we're in a room. And what do we do prayerfully in that room? Well, we start focusing on ourselves, on waking up, right? Okay. And then eventually we leave that room and we start meeting with the other people that are in our lives. And then finally, over the course of the day, we are going to engage in something that is a learning activity or working activity, something that lifts us up to a higher level. And that just seems to be a normal way that we go through our day. Well, prayer is a distillation of that, focusing on healing, helping us to become more aware of elevating us. And inside those three rooms of prayer, we meet a different aspect of God. Now, I'll try to remember to put the links for when I've talked about names of God. If part of the reason that you've left religion is because you don't think that we can pray to a bearded dude in the sky, I'm not praying to a bearded dude in the sky. When I say the word God, that is a placeholder for something that I cannot describe, that's ineffable, that is a unifying principle of the universe with something behind it that has something that pushes us forward. I don't know what that is. I'm not wise enough. As my dear friend Anson Leitner would say, what should I know from God? But I do know that there are things that unify us, and even if we can't put a name to it, prayerfully engaging in that does elevate us. And so God is a placeholder here. It's the best word that I can use. And in that first room, we encounter God as God exists inside of us. In that second room, we encounter God as God exists in each other. And in that third room, we encounter the ineffable God, God that is greater than us, God that is elevated from what we can understand. Back when I was in rabbinical school, I started getting this idea because the way that we were taught liturgy was to see boxes drawn on the whiteboard. And my liturgy professor that year, Shelley Donnell, a mensch, just an amazing teacher. I'm so grateful for him in my life and as a teacher. And every single prayer service, he would start off by drawing boxes for the parts of the prayer service. And every prayer service has essentially 3 or 4 major parts, and then it just depends on how you break them down. And he would then write the prayers that were in them, and we were supposed to know the general structure and then the more specific structure, and then finally each of the different prayers or psalms that were in that structure, and then eventually the content and meaning beneath them. So we started here and we kept on drilling down to a more detailed level. And the more you get into Jewish liturgy, you realize that those boxes contain not only items that are alike each other, but they lead to each other. Let me give a few examples of what that looks like. So let's start with that first room. Well, that room contains 2 sections of prayer in the morning service, the morning blessings, the Birkat HaShachar, and the Psalms of Praise, the Psuke de Zimra. And once again, that image of we wake up, and what's the first thing that we say in our daily prayers? Modeh ani or moda ani lefnecha melechai v'chayam she'exarti bi nishmati b'chemla rabba u'munatecha. Gratefully, modeh, I stand before you because you've returned my soul to me. Great is your faithfulness. And once again, okay, if we're cynical, wow, boy, is that pre-modern? Is that checking my brain at the door? Yes, sure, you go back far enough in Jewish history, and there are people who believe this literally today, and again, that's fine, that when we go to sleep at night, 1/60th of our soul dies, and so we are magically happy when that soul is returned to us by an anthropomorphic God. But like everything else in Judaism, you can take the surface level or go down deep. And what is the down deep? Well, it's not even that far down to figure this out. The very first word we say when we wake up in the morning is thank you. Now, you want to see how practical and real Judaism is? Here's a test. Not even a test. I dare you. I double dog dare you to do this. Because right now, the majority of you who are watching this, I'll bet you, guilty as charged, within the first few minutes of waking up, if not the first thing, you pick your mobile phone off of the counter or the table next to your bed, and you open up to whatever your favorite social media platform is, and you start flipping through your feed. I'm not even going to link to the various neuroscientists who have talked about just how devastating that is to our brains. That's a different thing altogether. But since we're used to doing that, the end result is usually a lack of focus, getting more tired. Great. Maybe I will link to an article or two. But I challenge you, I dare you, for 1 week, wake up and again, step away from the prayer book. I think this is beautifully done through the prayer book, but step away from it. And the first thing you do, instead of picking up the phone, is say, I am grateful for, and list 3 things for 1 week. Give it 1 week. And then don't pick up the phone immediately after. I mean, go and have your cup of coffee or whatever, or pray. But try it. The first words in our prayer book are, I am thankful. Well, that's the wisdom of the prayer book. That first room, we encounter God as God exists inside us. The holiness that's inside of us. The desire to be elevated. The desire to repair that which is broken inside of us. We encounter that. And then we meditate on that by moving in a logical progression through a series of blessings and prayers and songs and psalms. So after gratitude, we have a blessing, and it will vary by prayer book, a blessing for the body. So we start with thank you that I'm alive. It's a good act of gratitude. Followed by thank you for what's working in my body. I've always thought that the translations into English are hilarious. That wonderful Jewish sarcasm where when someone asks how we're doing, we actually tell them, how are you feeling? Well, my back. Yeah. Oh Lord, the body that you gave me is functioning wonderfully. Well, the prayer is actually about being grateful for what is working. And as someone with a body who's not working the way that it should all the time, what a beautiful prayer to go through, followed by prayer for the soul. Oh God, the soul that you have made me is pure. Not starting off that I am guilty or dirty or worthy of being punished, but starting off with, you know what, the raw stuff, the raw material of my existence is pure. Tohorahi. Look at this progression that's already happening. What happens next? We have a series of really quick blessings, thankful for the miracles of every single day. Blessed are you, Eternal One, our God, who helps me distinguish between light and darkness, who gives me clothing, who has made me in your image. In that synagogue I was talking about outside of Seattle, we used to improvise these prayers as we went on. We'd all sing together, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shnatan lanu et. So blessed are you, Eternal God, sovereign of the universe, who has given us. And then all the kids, seriously, just about all of them, would raise their hands and then want to say something. The older kids would say it in Hebrew because they learned it. And then we would all say that together, the full blessing, and then amen. And yeah, there were a lot of people blessing chocolate and kitty cats and puppy dogs. Well, what a beautiful way to actually express what the Birkat HaShachar is. And oh yeah, that's followed by, may my tongue say good things, and may I not be affected by people, whether they're Jews or not Jews, who say nasty things against me. And I'm oversimplifying, I know, a lot of the individual prayers that are in there, but we move to then praising. Well, that's going to be a separate video on what it means to praise God if I don't see God as a bearded king sitting on a throne. But look at this emotional content, from gratitude to acknowledgement of body, acknowledgement of soul, acknowledgement of the daily things that are a gift in my life. And then that allowing me to lift my soul in song. That's a pretty good day so far. It's better than a lot of days many of us have had in our lives. All right, we're at the end of the first room. Now look what happens here. And I'm going to assume that we're experiencing prayer with a minyan, all right, with 10 other people with whom we can then have Jewish prayer. But if you're doing this by yourself, it's still going to make sense. But look what happens. You finish with this room of prayer. You've encountered what it means to have divinity inside of you, to be attached to all of this greater than us. And then we stand at a doorway and we look into this room, and guess who's in this room? We're standing at the doorways, getting ready to enter it. Everyone who we're ready to pray with. And we have our first moments of the prayers that require a minyan, that we have 10 Jews or more in liberal tradition. And we step in, but before we do it, there's always a transitional prayers between each of these boxes, each of these rooms. And this one is the Baruch Hu. And what's the Baruch Hu? One person says, all right, everyone, you're ready? We are about to step into a really cool place where we're going to encounter a different type of God's existence within us. Are you all ready? And everyone says, yeah, we're all ready. Translation to Hebrew, blessed is the Eternal One who is blessed. Everyone answers, bless the Eternal One who is blessed forever and ever, accompanied by bowing, because we are trying to respect that we are not God. We are a part of Godness. Now we step into this room. We're in a minyan together. And what's in this room? We encounter God as God is in all of us, the God in each other, the sacredness of each other person, the I-thou relationship of Martin Buber, that person praying is as much a child of the eternal, of the universe, of that which is greater than us, as we are. They have the same right to be a human. Whether they voted for the same president as we did or not, they are still a child of God. They still have as much right to be a human as us. And now we're praying together, and what is the central prayer in this room? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, we worship a God named Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and there's only one. Oh, but it's really, really cool, because remember, there's no such thing as translation, there's just interpretation. Let me give you a beautiful interpretation of these words. Shema, pay attention and internalize. Israel, what does that mean? The one who wrestles with divine things, who's in dialogue. So pay attention and internalize, all of you who are in the act of wrestling with the great questions. Adonai Eloheinu. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is a pun. It is a word that means existence, being. So what's our God? The sum of every aspect of being in the entire universe. Adonai Echad, and it's all one. We're all part of the exact same magnificentness. I know more than you. You know more than me. And it's not just that. We have around that blessings, 2 blessings before and then 1 or 2 after, depending on what time of day. And the order of the meaning of those blessings, no matter what time of, whether it's morning or whether it's evening, starts off with creation, moves to revelation, then moves to redemption. So we start off understanding that we are all part of that same oneness of creation. And then being part of that oneness, we have to actually learn something to overcome our base nature in order to understand that we're connected, and through doing that, then we are redeemed from our base nature.
Oh yeah, our prayers actually have meaning that are universal. They're couched in language. Sometimes it's difficult, but the underlying meaning, oh, it's magnificent. Now what happens? We get to the end of this room, and now we step to another room, and we open the door, and what do we see? I can't tell you. That's your encounter with that which is greater than you, greater than all of us. Some people visualize the throne room of God. Some people visualize stepping into light. Some people visualize being forced to look in a mirror. And this is the Amidah. This is the standing prayer. This is the central prayer. The erzatz, the replacement for temple ritual that we don't have anymore because we don't have temples, which I think that's a good thing because I love this democratization of Jewish prayer. But this is the place where we go in and we encounter something if we're open to it. This is a deeply personal room. It's a room where our heart can be broken. And I'm going to do another video on the order of these prayers because it's just something to explore at so many different levels. But we start off with a prayer for the Avot V'Imahot, for our ancestors, basically encountering through what's come before. We're standing here because we're part of a specific tradition. Doesn't mean that other people can't encounter that which is greater than us through their traditions. We are encountering through our tradition. That's the first prayer. And we move through one after another, the attributes of God and the holiness of God. And then at the very end, the very last prayer is shalom, for peace. And that's the end of this process, and it's also the hint to what it's all about, because the word for peace in Judaism, in Hebrew, is shalom. We translate into peace, which comes from the Latin pax. Pax Romana was an enforced peace by military. Is that what shalom is? No, it's the same root as the word shalem, to be complete. Why are we praying? To slowly recognize from the very beginning our brokenness. Because we're all broken in one way or another. It's part of being human. There's no promise in Judaism that you're going to be happy. We find ways to celebrate the moments when we are happy. We put a huge exclamation point, a dagesh, on them. We celebrate together. We require ourselves to celebrate with other people these amazing moments of highlighted happiness in our life. There's no promise that we're just going to be happy. We are, on the other hand, people who move from tragedy and trauma to tragedy and trauma. And if you choose to go outside of religion to find the answers, then a good psychologist and therapist is going to say, you know what you need to do is you need to meditate or exercise and or maybe even pray. And they're all the same thing if done with the intentionality of recognizing that there's always something in us that can be healed, elevated, and made better. We start with, I am thankful, and we end with, make us complete. Oseh Shalom B'Mermav. As the heavens are in peace because they are complete, may we be complete in the same way. So yeah, another video where I prove that I would not make a very good Stoic. I get way too excited. Maybe not. Maybe I just get excited enough. I think that when we step away from Jewish ritual, oftentimes we're doing it out of fear that we will be seen as unknowledgeable. And you know what? Guess what? There are actually people out there who would love to tear us down and mock us for being unknowledgeable. That's actually true. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. One of the problems with human beings is we never live up to our beautiful religions. A lot of Jews fall short of Judaism. A lot of Christians fall short of Christianity. A lot of Muslims fall short of Islam. And then I think you could probably fill in the blank of every religion there. So you know what? Yeah, someone's probably going to mock us if we're less knowledgeable than they are. That knowledge isn't doing them very much good, is it? As I said in my last video, what part of you shall love your neighbor as yourself and the stranger in your midst you shall love as yourself did you not exactly understand? But all Jewish ritual is trying to take a truth that has no words that can be expressed. And because we actually need words to then put it into words and then to ritualize it. And if we get caught in the ritual itself without understanding there's an underlying structure, then we can roll our eyes and see it as silly. Or we can realize that if we wake up every single day and say, I am thankful, and then we become aware of our bodies and our souls. And even when we're going through hard times, the gifts that we still have around us. And then we find ourselves in a group with whom we can pray. And then we take a little time to just be silent for a minute and hear if there's something that we need to hear. It's probably not going to be a literal voice, but boy, oh boy, do we have a lot of wisdom when we're just silent long enough to hear what it is that our better selves, God, the universe, our angels, someone, probably us, is trying to tell us something. And the best way to do that's not flipping through Instagram. It's actually probably going to be engaging in prayer, meditation, active relaxation, walking hand in hand on the beach, walking alone on the beach, if you're lucky enough to be near a beach. We roll our eyes at our tradition, all of our religious traditions, at a risk. Yeah, the literal narratives of them have fallen away, but we don't have a good replacement yet. So the replacement is our religions, but with our brains fully intact and starting to ask deeper questions on how can I engage in my beautiful tradition without turning off my brain, but yet healing, but yet elevating myself and those around me. So try it. Like I said, I dare you. Try it for a week. Just that one part, saying, what are you thankful for? And if something happens, then maybe you owe it to yourself to beginning to engage in Jewish prayer if you're not already there. That's called lifting yourself up. That lifts others up in the process. And with that, I say thank you for being a part of Beit Virtuali. I'll see you next time.
כבודו בכל העמים נפלותיו כי גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד נורא הוא על כל אלוהים כי כל אלוהי העם